Hey friends, tonight we begin with You Wouldn't. Survive a day in the Middle Ages. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Only if you truly enjoy this kind of slow, calming storytelling. Your support means the world and helps me keep creating peaceful spaces like this one. Tell me no in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I love seeing how this little quiet corner of the internet brings together people from all over the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan or some soft background, and let's gently into tonight's journey together. Imagine opening your eyes, not to the soft buzz of an alarm clock or the glow of a smartphone, but to the pitch darkness of a thatched hut or a drafty stone chamber. The first shock that greets you is the cold, not the kind of chill you shake off with a shiver and a blanket tug, but the deep, biting cold that seeps into your bones because insulation is a luxury no one here possesses. In the Middle Ages, central heating does not exist, and fires rarely burn all night. Wood is precious, costly, and difficult to gather. By the time morning comes, the embers have long died, and your breath escapes your lips in small clouds that hover above your face before vanishing into the stale air. Your bed, if you are lucky enough to have one, is not the springy, cushioned sanctuary you know today. It is more likely a sack stuffed with straw, perhaps crawling with lice or fleas. If you are poor, which is almost certain given the vast majority of medieval people were peasants, you may not even have this. Instead, you lie on a blanket laid upon the hard-packed earth floor, which is as cold and unforgiving as the winter. Outside, and when you shift, you notice the sentan, earthy, sour odor that clings to everything, for hygiene is an afterthought in this world. Your body itself carries it. Baths are rare, reserved for holy days or times when illness or dirt cannot be ignored. The oils of your skin, the sweat of your labor, and the grime of the earth blend together to form the unmistakable human musk of the medieval poor. As your eyes adjust to the dimness, you might hope to ease yourself awake slowly, but that luxury is denied to you. You are not alone in this room. If you are a peasant, your entire family shares one small space. Parents, children, even the animals are crowded together in a single room. Chickens might shuffle in the straw by the door, while a goat or a pig snores softly in the corner. This is not madness, but survival. The warmth of animals helps fight the cold, and they are too valuable to be left outside where thieves, wolves, or winter frost could claim them. Privacy does not exist. The smell of dung and sweat mixes with smoke from the hearth and the sour temps of last night's porridge pot, still sticky with congealed oats. This is how a medieval day begins, in darkness, in cold, in filth, and in the company of both man and beast. The first sound that breaks through is not a pleasant tune or a gentle alarm. It is often the rough call of the rooster, or perhaps the toll of a church bell, if you live near enough to a parish. Time, in this world, is not measured by clocks on the wall. Few can afford such devices, and mechanical clocks are still a novelty, restricted to monasteries or wealthy towns. Instead, your day is structured by the rising of the sun, the ringing of the church bell, and the demands of labor. You are awake not because you want to be, but because the day's work is endless, and survival demands it. Your stomach churns as you rise, for hunger is a constant companion. Medieval diets are monotonous and meager. Breakfast, if it exists, is not the hearty spread of bread, eggs, and coffee you might imagine. Instead, you might scrape together a crust of stale bread, perhaps softened with weak ale or watered-down pottage from the night before. Milk, if your household keeps a cow, may be available in small amounts, though it spoils quickly. Meat in the morning is almost unthinkable unless you are of the nobility, and even then, meat is a luxury saved for feasts and midday meals. The peasant's breakfast is a reminder of scarcity, not abundance. You eat not to enjoy, but to keep, your body moving until the next meager serving arrives. Even lifting that bread to your mouth is not simple. Imagine your teeth, worn down by years of grinding on coarse bread baked with gritty flour. Stones and sand often found their way into the dough during milling, and over time, this eroded teeth until they became jagged stumps. Dental care does not exist, and toothaches are a torment many endure daily. The bread you chew now might crack a tooth, adding pain to hunger. And if infection follows, which it often does, your life may be measured in weeks rather than years. Such is the precarious balance of medieval health. Outside, the morning is already alive. You hear it in the distant lowing of cattle, the bleating of sheep, and the muffled voices of neighbors beginning their work. Villages are small, and sound carries. Privacy is not only absent in the home, but throughout your entire community. Everyone knows everyone else, their debts, their sins, their quarrels. Gossip and reputation are as important to survival as food or shelter, for a community can turn on you quickly, and without the support of neighbors, you are lost. Dressing is no relief. Your clothes are rough, made of wool or linen, scratchy against your skin. You may own only 1 or 2 sets, patched again and again until the fabric barely holds together. Washing clothes is rare, for soap is expensive and water requires effort to fetch and heat. The grime of yesterday lingers today, and so it will tomorrow. As you tug on your garments, you feel the itch of lice crawling through seams. It is not unusual, everyone has them. Nobles scratch at lice just as peasants do, though the rich at least can perfume themselves or change garments more often. You have no such luxury. The itch is a part of life. If you think you might linger inside for comfort, think again. The structure around you offers little relief. Your home is a simple wattle and daub construction. Wooden frames plastered with mud, straw, and dung. The roof is thatched, and in winter, frost seeps through. Rain drips steadily when storms come, leaving damp patches that rot wood and cause illness. Insects and rodents find easy entry, for no one has devised pest control. Smoke from the hearth fills the air because chimneys are a novelty not yet common. The smoke irritates your lungs and eyes, leaving a cough that never quite fades. Many medieval peasants suffered from chronic respiratory issues from years of smoke inhalation. Children, too, grew up in this atmosphere, their lungs weak from the start. So you step outside into the pale grey light of dawn, and here the world presses down on you again. Mud squelches beneath your feet, for villages are not paved. Pathways are churned into mire by the endless passage of people, carts, and animals. Waste human and animal alike litters the ground. There is no sewage system, no trash collection. A pail of waste might be tossed from a doorway into the lane, left to mix with rain and soil. The stench is powerful, a constant reminder that disease lurks in every corner of this world. The Middle Ages are a time when plague can sweep through with devastating speed, and filth is its most faithful companion. But you cannot turn back. The day's work calls you. For peasants, survival means labor, and labor waits for no one. Fields must be tended, animals fed, firewood gathered, water drawn. You are already behind, and time lost is food lost. Your body aches with the effort, though you have barely begun. Malnutrition weakens you, the cold gnaws at you, and the day stretches ahead with no end in sight. And yet, this is only the morning, the beginning of one day. One day in the Middle Ages, and already survival feels like an impossible task. The morning has only just begun, and already your body feels weighed down with the burden of survival. You step out into the village lane, boots if you are fortunate enough to own them sinking into the muck. If not, you're bare or poorly wrapped. Feet sting with a chill and grow numb as they meet the frozen earth. Frost coats the edges of roofs, sparkling in the dawn, but to you it offers no beauty, only warning. A hard freeze means that gathering water will be more difficult, firewood scarcer, and fields too stiff for ploughing. Yet the chores do not wait for the sun to warm the land, for time is life itself. If you are a child, perhaps no older than 6 or 7, your duties already mirror those of adults. Childhood in the Middle Ages is short, almost non-existent by modern standards. There are no toys waiting for you, no school day filled with lessons or games. Instead, your small hands may clutch a bundle of kindling, or you might be sent trudging to the stream with a heavy wooden bucket, the weight of water far beyond your tiny frame. If you spill it, if you are slow, you will face a parent's harsh scolding, for every drop matters. There is no running tap inside the home, no magical reservoir of clean water to draw from. Every sip comes with effort, and sometimes with danger. Streams are not clean, often polluted by waste or animal remains. You may drink sickness without knowing it, the unseen enemy of dysentery lurking in what seems to be clear water. Yet thirst leaves no choice. You drink what there is and hope for. Adults, the first labor is often with the animals. Chickens must be let out, though they too are thin, their eggs unreliable in winter. The cow or goat must be milked, and you kneel on the cold ground, fingers stiff as they work the teats. If your family owns no cow, you envy the neighbor who does, for milk is a luxury to your household. A pig snuffles at the door, impatient to be fed, though feeding an animal means you sacrifice grain or scraps that could have been yours. Still, the pig is wealth on legs, its fat and meat representing survival for months to come if it lives long enough. You feed it reluctantly, knowing hunger in your own belly deepens. The church bell tolls in the distance again, its solemn clang, a reminder that every hour belongs as much to God as to you. Religion saturates this world in ways that might feel suffocating to you now. The first thoughts of the morning are often prayers, whispered by rote before chores begin. To fail to honor God, even in your private mutterings, could invite shame, suspicion, or worse. The priest reminds you weekly that sin leads to damnation, and that punishment is not only in the afterlife, but may arrive in the form of plague, famine, or misfortune. Fear of divine wrath is as constant as hunger, weaving itself into the rhythm of the day. If you are unlucky enough to be a serf, bound to the land of a lord, you cannot even fully claim the food you labor for. The work you perform today in your lord's fields or tending his animals comes not by choice, but by obligation. The land you live upon is not yours. It belongs to the noble whose manor rises on the horizon, a stone building fortified against both attack and the miseries you endure. Your survival depends on his mercy, and his mercy depends on your obedience. Even in the first tasks of the day, You live not for yourself, but for another. By mid-morning, the cold has burrowed into your joints. Your hands are cracked, the skin splitting from endless exposure to wind, frost, and rough labor. Gloves are a luxury you do not have. Your back already aches from bending to cut kindling or scraping frost from the water bucket, and you are still hungry. That crust of bread you swallowed earlier has done little to fill the emptiness gnawing at your insides. If you are a woman, your duties are doubled. Not only must you rise to help with farming or tending animals, but you must also prepare what little food there is, mend clothing, spin wool into thread, and watch over small children who are as prone to illness as the weakest lamb. Your day is not a choice, it is a chain of necessities, each one vital, each one exhausting. The danger of sickness lingers in every corner of this routine. You cough as smoke from the hearth clings to your lungs, and the ache in your teeth from biting bread flares again. Perhaps your neighbor limps past, her face pale, carrying a basket of laundry to wash in the freezing stream. You wonder if she suffers from the ague, the fever that spreads quickly through the village. Or maybe her limp is the result of a festering wound. A simple cut from a knife or scythe can spell disaster in this world. There are no antibiotics, no sterile bandages, no doctors in the sense you would understand them. A wound festers, blackens, spreads, and kills, often slowly and with agony. As you watch her, you cannot help but fear the same fate for yourself. For one wrong step, one slip of the blade, and you too could begin the march toward death. Still, work presses on. Perhaps today is one of the days you must join others in. The fields, even in winter. There are fences to mend, ditches to dig, and tools to repair. Or perhaps it is slaughtering day, when an animal must be killed to feed the village. The task is grim, the smell of blood heavy in the cold air, the cries of the animal lingering in your ears. You know that each bite of meat will be a rare and treasured moment in the coming weeks, but for now the butchery turns your stomach. Hunger, however, will make the same meat a feast tonight. You have no say in the matter, life demands it, and through all of this, there is no respite. The concept of free time, of leisure, is nearly unknown to you. Every waking moment belongs to survival or to God. If you pause too long, hunger, illness, or your Lord's displeasure will remind you that you have no luxury of idleness. Even in the morning, the weight of the day presses upon you, and already it feels unbearable. It is only mid-morning, and your body is tired, your spirit weary, and your stomach empty. Yet this is only the beginning. The sun has barely risen, and before it sets again, you will be tested by labor, hunger, and the relentless demands of life in the Middle Ages. And you realize, with a creeping sense of dread, that one single day in this world is already more than you may be able to endure. The sun has climbed a little higher, but its warmth is still a pale thing in winter. You rub your hands together, trying to summon circulation back into stiff, aching fingers. The village hums with activity, though it is not the cheerful bustle of markets or festivals. It is the heavy rhythm of survival, a music of scraping shovels, creaking carts, bleating animals, and the coughs of the sick. Each sound reminds you that there is no rest. If you are in the fields, you kneel in soil that is frozen hard or slick with mud. The tools you use are crude, often little more than wooden handles bound with iron tips. They splinter, rust, and break easily, and there is no convenient replacement. You mend them yourself, or not at all. Each strike of the hoe sends a jolt up your arm. a reminder of how fragile your body is compared to the relentless earth. Your back curves under the strain, and already you feel the dull ache that will only worsen as years pass. Few in this age stand tall in old age. They are bent, twisted, worn down by decades of labor that begins in childhood and never truly ends. If your task is to fetch water again, you trudge the same path with your bucket, the journey monotonous and yet always risky. In summer, water might be stagnant with algae and insects, carrying fevers that spread silently through the village. In winter, the stream might be edged with dangerous ice, slippery enough to send you tumbling. A broken bone here is a sentence of suffering, for a simple fracture can mean permanent disability. There are no skilled surgeons waiting to set it properly. Your body heals crookedly, or not at all, and you live out your days limping, diminished, or dependent on others who already have nothing to spare. The hunger gnaws at you still. It has not lessened, only deepened, as your body spends energy faster than you can replenish it. A piece of stale bread, a mouthful of watery broth, these are no match for the labor demanded. Sometimes you chew on herbs or chew strips of bark, softened in boiling water just to quiet the stomach. Children cry from hunger, their ribs visible beneath thin tunics, their bellies swollen not with food but with malnutrition. And yet you must silence them and keep working. No one has enough to give away. Disease is never far. You notice sores on a neighbor's hands, raw and red. You hear another villager hacking with a wet cough that rattles the chest. Perhaps consumption. Perhaps only a winter cold. You have no way to know which until it takes them. Families bury their dead quickly, not out of disrespect, but necessity. The smell of decay, the danger of contagion, and the need to return to work leave little time for grief. Death is not exceptional here. It is woven into the daily fabric of existence. The priest's voice echoes faintly from the chapel, reminding villagers that suffering is holy, that it draws them closer to God. But as you wipe sweat from your brow, despite the cold, you wonder if such words truly comfort those who labor endlessly with little relief. Faith is the one thread keeping many alive, and yet faith does not fill an empty belly. Still, you cross yourself when passing the chapel door, fearing the judgment of both God and neighbor. In this world, piety is survival too. To appear ungodly is to risk suspicion, whispers, even accusations that can destroy what little you have. Mid-morning tasks often shift toward communal obligations. If the Lord demands repairs to his fences or walls, you are summoned to join the others. The manor looms above you, stone and timber, stronger than any home you will ever inhabit. Its size reminds you that power is uneven, that your body bends under labor while the noble's body reclines in relative comfort. Perhaps he dines on venison or honeyed bread while you choke down crusts. You resent it, but you do not speak, for to defy him is to invite punishment. Whips, stocks, even expulsion from the land. Any of these could ruin you. And ruin here means death. By now the sun is high enough to glare into your eyes, but its light does not ease your exhaustion. The day stretches ahead endlessly, and already your muscles tremble with fatigue. The monotony of work dulls your thoughts. There is no dreaming of leisure, no hope for escape. Your only desire is to endure until evening, and even that feels like a distant horizon. The smells of the village cling to you. Smoke from countless hearths hangs thick in the air, mingled with the sharp odor of dung and the sour tang of unwashed bodies. You are accustomed to it, yet the stench still catches in your throat sometimes. Bathing is rare, perhaps once a week. If you are fortunate, sometimes only a few times in a season. Water is too precious to waste, and soap too expensive to use freely. Lice crawl at your scalp, fleas bite your skin, rats scurry at the edges of granaries and barns, unafraid of people. They are constant companions, and they carry their own dangers in their fur and droppings. You live surrounded by pestilence, and though you do not yet know it, these same creatures will one day bring a plague that will decimate half of Europe. Even the air feels heavy with the weight of survival. Every villager knows that a single accident, a single lost harvest, could end them. And so the morning hours are driven not only by hunger, but by fear of failure, fear of hunger's deeper bite, fear of disease, fear of the noble's wrath, fear of God's judgment. Fear is the silent overseer of every task. By late morning, your body is weary, your spirit dulled, your stomach still hollow. The day has only just begun, and already you are exhausted. And yet, there is no pause, no reprieve, no comfort waiting. Noon approaches, and with it, the next relentless test of endurance. The church bell tolls faintly in the distance, marking midday. For many in later centuries, that sound might mean a pause, a meal, a chance to rest in the shade. But here, in the grinding reality of the Middle Ages, noon does not bring relief. It is simply another reminder of how long you must endure before the sun finally dips and the day's toil ends. If you are fortunate, there might be a meager portion of food waiting, a hunk of bread, rough and coarse, made of barley or rye rather than wheat. Its texture is gritty, flecked with husks and sometimes small stones that slipped in during grinding. Every bite wears at your teeth, chipping away enamel you cannot replace. Perhaps a ladle of thin pottage accompanies it, a soup stretched from vegetables grown in the last season, now limp and flavorless after months of storage. If you are especially lucky, a sliver of salted pork or fish may appear, its taste sharp and overpowering after so much bland fare. But luck is rare, and most days you swallow broth that offers warmth more than nourishment. Children cluster around, their eyes large and expectant, hands reaching for scraps. Mothers break their own share in half, giving the larger portion to their little ones, though it means their own bellies remain hollow. Hunger here is not an occasional discomfort, but a permanent condition. It hovers over the village like a shadow, pressing into every stomach, tightening every jaw dart as you eat. The air is filled with the same sounds as mourning the creak of wooden carts, the clang of blacksmiths hammering iron, the bleating of sheep butt now overlaid with the sighs of the weary. Men sit briefly on logs or low stools, backs hunched, heads bowed, savoring these few minutes when tools are lowered. Women nurse infants while balancing bowls, already thinking of the next chore. Mending clothes, carding wool, stirring cauldrons, scraping hides. Children too young to work chase each other in the mud, but even their laughter feels thin, restrained, edged with fatigue. The moment passes quickly. There is no lingering, no leisurely conversation. The noble's steward, or the reeve, keeps a careful eye on the village. Too much rest invites scolding, sometimes punishment. You rise again, joints stiff, limbs trembling from the morning's exertion. The sun sits high in the sky, but it offers no mercy. In summer, it bakes your skin red and raw. In winter, it shines coldly, mocking your labor. Either way, the light only emphasizes how long the day stretches before you. Now tasks turn heavier. In the Lord's fields, plowing or planting continues. The plow itself is clumsy, dragged by oxen that plod slowly, snorting clouds of breath into the air. You guide the beast, whip in hand, urging it forward. The soil resists, clumps thick with stones. Blisters rise on your palms, splitting in two. Open sores. You wrap them in cloth, but the sweat soaks through, stinging as it seeps into raw flesh. Each furrow carved into the earth feels endless. You tell yourself it is necessary, that the seeds you sow today will one day keep you alive. Yet you know much of the harvest will be taken as tithe, rent, or tax, leaving you only scraps of what your body has earned. Elsewhere, you might be repairing fences, hauling timber, or stacking thatch onto roofs. The work is varied, but it shares the same weight, unending, exhausting, often dangerous. A single misstep on a ladder, a log rolling unexpectedly, an ox stumbling. These can end your life as surely as disease or famine. There is no safety net, no hospital waiting. If you are injured, you either recover on your own or you do not recover at all. And if you cannot work, you are no longer useful. Uselessness here is a death sentence. The air is thick with the smells of sweat and labor. Your tunic clings to your back, damp and grimy. Flies buzz around open wounds on animals, around refuse piled near the edge of the village. The stench of dung, human and beast alike, never fades. It seeps into your clothes, your hair, your very skin. Bathing is a luxury, and perfumes are reserved for nobles. You live in a haze of odor that would be unbearable to later centuries, but here it is simply life. Sometimes, as you work, your mind drifts. You imagine a world where you do not toil every waking hour, where meals are plentiful, where warmth is easy to find. Perhaps you picture yourself free, wandering forests without obligation to lord or priest. But the fantasy cannot last. A shout pulls you back, a task demands your hand, and you are reminded again of the chains that bind you not iron shackles, but the endless needs of survival. The afternoon stretches on, each hour a repetition of the one before. Your body aches, your head throbs, your stomach growls anew. Yet you must press forward, for stopping is not allowed. Even in those rare moments when the steward looks away, even when your fellow workers pause to wipe sweat from their brows, you know the weight of necessity compels you. If you stop, the work remains undone. If the work remains undone, your family may starve. There is no greater whip than hunger, no harsher master than the land itself. By now, the sun begins its slow descent. Shadows lengthen across the fields, and the thought of evening kindles a flicker of hope. But you know the day's end is still hours away, and the hardest truth of all presses in. This is not a single day of hardship. This is every day. From the moment you are strong enough to lift a tool until the day your body gives out, this cycle repeats without mercy. Morning, noon, night, it is all the same. Work, hunger, cold, fear, exhaustion, a loop without end. And as you press your hands into the soil once more, sweat dripping into your eyes, you realize the bitter truth. You would not survive even this far in the Middle Ages. For while your body might endure a few hours, your spirit would soon break beneath the relentless grind. For those who lived here, survival was not a question. Of thriving, it was the barest clinging to existence, one day at a time. The sun begins its slow descent, but there is no relief in its movement. The air remains heavy, pressing down on you with a stifling weight that makes every breath feel thick. Your shoulders ache from the day's strain, the muscles in your back knotting tighter with every lift, every pull, every step across uneven ground. Time itself begins to warp. The hours between midday and dusk are some of the most punishing of all, not because the tasks are harder, but because your body has already been worn thin, and yet there is so much more still demanded. By now, the rhythm of work is almost mechanical. A swing of the scythe, a shove of the plow, a pull of the rope, a lift of the bucket. The motions repeat until your arms feel as though they belong to someone else, distant and disconnected. Sweat runs in rivulets down your face, stinging your eyes, soaking the collar of your tunic. Dust clings to every inch of exposed skin, coating your lips, making the inside of your mouth taste like earth. You swallow, but your throat is too dry, and the ache of thirst lingers with every wordless breath. If you are in the fields, the sun still glares from above, painting the rows of crops in a sharp, golden haze. Birds wheel lazily overhead, their cries almost mocking, as if they are freer than you will ever be. The ox trudges forward, dumb and patient, but you envy its simplicity. It knows nothing of obligation, nothing of rents and tithes and lords who demand the fruits of your labor. It works because you guide it. You work because you have no choice. Elsewhere, if you are assigned to gather wood or fetch water, your tasks take you beyond the edges of the village. The forest looms, both a provider and a threat. Its shadows are cool, a brief respite from the sun, but they hide dangers, wolves, bandits, the unknown. Every snap of a branch beneath your feet reminds you how alone you are when away from the safety of numbers. You hurry, bending beneath the weight of logs strapped to your back or balancing heavy buckets that cut into your hands. Each step feels longer than the last, and the thought of another trip nearly crushes you. The afternoon is also the time for chores that seem endless in their repetition. Women gather by the streams, beating clothes against rocks, their hands, red and raw from cold water. The sound echoes a dull, rhythmic slap that blends with the chatter of voices. Children too young for field work are made useful here, carrying smaller bundles, running errands, tending fires. Even the elderly, bent and fragile, sit outside their doors weaving baskets or mending nets. For in this world there is no true rest. The smells of the village grow heavier in the afternoon. Heat bakes refuse into the ground, releasing a pungent mix of rot and manure. The pigsty reeks, chickens scatter dust into the air, and the drains that run along the edges of the lanes ooze foul liquid. You wrinkle your nose, but there is no escape. This is the air you live in, breathe in, sleep in, and when sickness comes and it always does, it spreads easily, borne on these very odors and filth that seep into your skin. You notice how time seems to crawl in the later part of the day. Morning was swift because you were fresh, because hunger and urgency pushed you forward. But afternoon drags, each hour stretching endlessly. The bell from the church may ring to mark the passing of time, but its sound does not comfort you. Instead, it reminds you that another hour has been carved away from your strength. You glance at the sun, squinting, willing it to sink faster. But the heavens are indifferent to your suffering. If you pause, even for a moment, you feel the weight of exhaustion pressing harder. Your legs tremble, your back threatens to seize into knots. You want nothing more than to collapse on the ground, close your eyes, and drift into oblivion. But to stop is dangerous. The reeve's eyes are sharp, and the noble steward expects results. Even your neighbors may glare if you falter, for your share of labor is tied to theirs, and 1 week link can mean punishment for all. So you push forward, forcing your body into motion again, even as every part of you screams to give in. As the day winds into late afternoon, a dull ache settles into your bones. Hunger rises again, sharper now because the small midday meal has long burned away. Your stomach twists, a hollow drum echoing with each step. You imagine food, fresh bread, roasted meat, thick stews, but the fantasy only deepens the ache. You know what awaits you at day's end is little more than another portion of porridge or stale bread. Enough to keep you alive, never enough to make you full. And so the afternoon grinds on, the hours piling into a weight of their own. The world around you seems muted, dulled by fatigue. Even sounds hammers voices, the bleating of sheep blur into a constant hum, background noise. To your suffering, your mind wanders, drifting on the edge of despair, then jerks back when a tool slips or a child cries out. You cannot afford to lose focus, for carelessness here can cost dearly. A cut, an infection, an accident, all of these can end not just your day but your life. The sun finally begins to tip lower, painting the fields in shades of amber and red. Shadows lengthen, stretching like fingers across the ground. A murmur rises among workers, not of joy but of hope that the end of the day draws near. Yet even in this, there is no promise of peace. Evening brings its own burdens, its own struggles. The day is never truly over. And so, with the weight of afternoon pressing down on your soul, you trudge onward, your body faltering but your will chained to survival. You do not live in this world, you endure it, hour by endless hour, always, one breath away from collapse. The sun finally begins to lower, slipping westward, but its descent feels agonizingly slow. Every time you glance upward, you hope to see the first touch of twilight creeping across the horizon. But instead, the same dull blaze still hovers there, bleeding gold across the fields. The shadows stretch long, crawling from hedges and huts, spilling over furrows in the soil. But the work is not yet done. There is always one more row to cut, one more sheaf to tie, one more load to carry. Your body moves in jerks now, clumsy and unsteady. The tools feel heavier than they did in the morning, as though they've absorbed the hours of your struggle. The wooden handle of the scythe digs blisters into your palms. The rope of the water bucket burns fresh grooves into your skin. You grit your teeth and press forward, each step drawn from the stubborn core of survival that refuses to let you falter. Still, you can feel how fragile you've become. Your muscles quiver, your legs shake beneath your weight, your eyes blur with fatigue. The smallest slip could bring you down. And yet the expectation remains. Keep working. Evening brings a subtle shift in the air, but it is not the relief you crave. The wind cools slightly, but with it comes dampness that clings to your skin and makes your sweat feel clammy. The smell of churned soil, dung, and smoke thickens as more fires are lit in preparation for night. The crackle of hearths and the drifting trails of wood smoke reach you across the lanes and fields, teasing you with the thought of food, but the scent is thin, carrying little promise. You know well that your portion will be meager. In the village, the lanes are crowded again as people return from scattered tasks. Men trudge with tools slung over shoulders, their steps heavy and faces slack with exhaustion. Women return with baskets of gathered herbs, with buckets of water sloshing against their skirts, with arms burdened by bundles of wood. Children, dirt-streaked and restless, chase one another until sharp words drive them back to chores. The whole settlement hums with the sound of transition, not toward rest. but toward another set of duties that come when the fields are finally left behind, inside cottages. The air is already heavy with the smoke of hearth fires. Sparks snap, as damp wood resists the flame. Clay pots simmer slowly, filled with gruel made from barley or oats, sometimes thinned with wild greens or a scrap of dried fish. The smell is earthy, plain, and constant. It is not a feast, nor does it change. Often, you taste the meal in your imagination already, but it does little to ease the hollow pit in your stomach. The hunger that has gnawed at you all afternoon only sharpens, twisting until it is almost painful. And yet, there is no pause for the body just because the sun dips lower. Livestock must be tended. Goats and sheep are herded back into pens, there, bleats sharp and insistent as they press against one another. Cows must be milked, the warm froth squirting into wooden pails as hands cramped from the motion. Pigs grunt and squeal as slop is poured into troughs, and chickens are corralled, their feathers catching the last glimmers of sunlight. Even in this, danger lurks. One misstep with a cow's hoof, one careless slip near the pen, can leave you broken and useless, a death sentence in a world with no room for the helpless. As twilight thickens, so too does the sense of unease. The forest edge grows darker, its shadows deepening until it feels alive with unseen eyes. The distant howl of a wolf or the hoot of an owl carries across the fields, prickling the back of your neck. People glance toward the horizon, urging their steps faster, for they know the dangers of nightfall. It is not only beasts to fear, bandits, outlaws, desperate men who have nothing left to lose. They all find cover in the dark. The village is a fragile island of light, and the night presses against it like a tide. The sound of the church bell cuts through the gathering dusk, solemn and slow. Its toll marks the approach of night prayers, a signal that the day's labor is drawing to its official end. For a fleeting moment, you might feel a wave of relief, your body longing to collapse on the straw mat that passes for a bed. But the truth presses in again. Even now, rest is not yet yours. The meal must be eaten, animals must be secured, tools must be cleaned and stored. Firewood must be gathered to keep the cottage warm, and if you are unlucky enough to live in the colder reaches of the land, the fight against the chill of night will demand its toll too. Your thoughts drift to bed, to the idea of lying down, of letting your eyes close without fear of being called to another task. Yet you know that the straw is lumpy, that the vermin in the thatch will scuttle and bite, that the smoky air inside the cottage will choke your lungs even as you sleep. Comfort is a word without meaning here. You do not seek rest, you seek survival through the hours until dawn. Still, a quiet shift begins to creep in as the last of the light fades. The furious pace of the day slows, even if only slightly. Voices are softer, more subdued. The laughter of children, when it comes, is hushed, carrying in short bursts before fading into the night. The village huddles together, its fires glowing, its lanes shadowed, its people weary to the bone. You can feel the strain of the day etched into every line of your body. But you know, as you stand there, watching the final light bleed away, that tomorrow will bring the same dot, and yet, in the silence between the tolling of bells and the crackle of hearth fires, there is a strange persistence. Somehow, despite all you endure, you lift your tired hands one more time, finish the last of your tasks, and step into the night taking, hungry, weary, but alive. The last sliver of daylight vanishes, swallowed by the horizon. The village sinks into darkness, broken only by the faint glow of fires and the occasional flicker of a torch carried along a lane. Night has arrived, and though the fields lie still, the struggle of existence does not end. In fact, for many, it grows heavier. The world beyond the pale circle of firelight is unknowable and threatening. You can feel its weight pressing at the edges of your vision, a reminder that safety is never assured inside the cottage. The warmth of the hearth seems at first like a comfort. Flames leap and crackle, shadows flickering across rough timber, beams and earthen walls. Yet the air is thick, heavy with smoke that stings the eyes and makes every breath feel shallow. The small window holes are shuttered tight against the chill and whatever prowls outside. But that only traps the smoke further within. You cough into your sleeve, rubbing your eyes, yet there is no escaping it. To breathe is to inhale fire. The meal is eaten by the dim glow of the firelight. Wooden bowls, rough-hewn and often chipped, hold thin porridge made from oats or barley. Sometimes it is salted, sometimes it carries the faint tang of herbs, but tonight it is plain. You scoop it with a wooden spoon that tastes bland and gritty, and yet each bite feels like a treasure because it fills the hollow gnawing inside your stomach. A scrap of hard bread may be shared, its crust so dense you must soak it in broth before. You can chew it. If you are lucky, there is a slice of cheese or a sliver of dried meat. If you are unlucky, there is nothing but the porridge, and not quite enough of that. The family huddles close around the hearth as they eat their bodies, pressed together against the chill that seeps from the cracks in the walls. The children lean against their mother's side, nodding with sleep before the bowls are even emptied. A baby fosses softly, the sound muffled against swaddling cloth. The father's shoulders slump as he finishes his share, the lines of exhaustion etched deep into his face. Conversation is scarce. There are no long tales or laughter this night, only the dull rhythm of survival. Words are saved because voices are weary, and every thought circles the same truth. Tomorrow will demand the same labor again. Once the bowls are scraped clean, the chores of nightfall begin. Tools must be checked laid beside the wall or beneath the bed, lest they be stolen or damaged. Embers must be banked carefully, covered in ash to smolder through the night so that fire can be rekindled come morning. Buckets of water are placed close at hand, not only for drinking, but in case the thatch above catches flame. Even in rest, danger lurks. Fire can be a friend, but just as easily it can be a destroyer. When the last task is done, the family prepares. For sleep, there are no soft mattresses, no clean sheets, no feather pillows. Instead, there is a pile of straw spread across the packed dirt floor, perhaps covered with rough linen or wool if fortune allows. The straw itches against your skin and shifts beneath you, and the vermin it harbors scurry and bite as the night stretches on. You feel the tickle of lice at your scalp, the crawl of fleas at your ankles, the tiny sting of bedbugs that live in the dark seams of the cottage. Sleep never comes easily. The night outside grows colder, the air creeping in through gaps in the wattle and daub. You draw a rough wool blanket over yourself. Its weave coarse, its surface scratchy, but it offers some reprieve from the chill. Still, your feet remain numb, your breath fogs in the dim light, and the fire at the hearth dwindles lower, casting longer shadows. You hear the wind sigh against the roof, rattling the thatch, and for a moment it feels as though the entire hut shivers around you. But it is not only the cold that unsettles you. The night carries sounds that stir the mind to fear. Somewhere beyond the village walls, a wolf howls, long and mournful, answered faintly by others across the hills. Dogs bark in reply, sharp and anxious, until the sound is swallowed by silence. Once more, owls call from the trees, their cries eerie, their wings ghostly in the dark. Occasionally, there comes a rustle at the edge of the lane, the snap of a twig, the crunch of a footstep. Your heart lurches, but you force yourself to believe. It is only the wind, only a fox or a hare scurrying unseen. Yet you know that not all who walk at night are beasts. There are men too who haunt the dark bandits, cast out from law, thieves desperate for food, wanderers who prey upon the weak. The village doors are barred with wooden beams, but they would not withstand a determined hand. Every creak of timber makes you stiffen. Every groan of the cottage walls feels like an omen. You lie still, your ears straining, your breath shallow, wondering if you will hear the scrape of hands against the door or the tread of feet upon the threshold. Sleep, when it comes, is shallow and broken. Dreams blur with the sounds of the night, the cry of beasts, the cough of neighbors in nearby huts, the restless whimper of children. You stir often, shifting to escape the itch of vermin, pulling the blanket tighter as the fire burns down too. Embers, time stretches thin, measured only by the rise and fall of your own breath and the restless churn of your thoughts. You wonder, not for the first time, if life has always been this way and if it will ever change. Yet such musings bring no comfort, only the knowledge that dawn is still many hours away. Through it all, the body never finds peace. Hunger gnaws still, even after supper. The aches of the day's labor settle deeper into your bones. Your shoulders stiff, your back sore, your hands swollen with work. You curl against the straw, trying to ease the pain, but the hardness of the earth beneath you gives no reprieve. You close your eyes and will yourself to drift away, but the moment you find yourself on the edge of rest, a new sound stirs you, jerking you awake again. The night is relentless, and yet, somehow, it passes. The fire flickers faintly, a glow barely holding on in the hearth. The sounds outside grow quieter, the cold deeper. Time moves forward even when you cannot measure it, and though your body suffers, though your mind teeters between fear and exhaustion, you endure, because there is no choice. Morning will come, and with it, the endless wheel of labor begins anew. You do not live this day to find comfort. You live it so that you may wake again to suffer the next. The first hint of morning does not come as light but as sound. Long before the horizon stirs with color, a rooster crows, sharp and shrill, piercing the thin veil of broken sleep. You stir on the straw pallet, your body stiff, your skin itching, from vermin that feasted on you through the night. Every joint aches, every limb feels heavy, as though you had not rested at all. The fire has sunk to dull embers, the air grown bitterly cold. When you draw in a breath, it tastes of ash and stale smoke, and your chest tightens in protest. You force your eyes open, and the dim interior of the hut greets you. Shadows still cling to the corners, but there is no escape from the knowledge that the day has begun. The blanket, rough wool that scratched at your skin all night offers little protection from the cold now. When you move, the straw rustles beneath you, sharp stalks pressing into your flesh. You push yourself upright, and a wave of dizziness threatens to pull you back down. But there is no time to surrender to weakness. Morning waits for no one. The rest of the family stirs as well. Children whimper softly, rubbing their eyes, reluctant to leave the little warmth their bodies have created together. The baby cries, its thin wail echoing against the wooden beams. A mother hushes it with tired whispers, pulling the infant close to her chest. The father rises with a groan, his face lined with fatigue, his eyes dull and bloodshot. Everyone carries the weight of the night, but no voice complains. Complaints change nothing, and survival demands silence and submission. The embers in the hearth are coaxed back to life. Stirred with practiced hands, a breath of air, a scrap of kindling. Soon a small flame flickers once more, though it smokes, heavily filling the hut with a new wave of choking haze. Water is fetched from the bucket set aside the night before, poured into a pot and set above the flame. The first meal of the day is no feast, merely a thin gruel of oats or barley, stretched with water until it barely clings to the spoon. There is no sweetness, no comfort in its taste, only the knowledge that it will keep the body upright through the day's labors. You eat in silence, each mouthful heavy in your stomach, yet never enough to banish hunger. Children eat greedily, scraping the bottom of their bowls, while parents often surrender part of their share to them. When the last scrap is gone, the bowls are wiped clean with bits of hard bread, the crumbs savored as though they were delicacies. Then, with no more delay, the day begins in earnest. Outside, the darkness is thinning. A faint grey creeps across the sky, outlining the silhouettes of thatched roofs and bare trees. The ground crunches with frost, each step brittle and sharp. Beneath your worn leather shoes, the air cuts like a knife, biting at your nose and ears until they burn with cold. You pull your cloak tighter around you, though it is thin and patched, and it does little to keep the chill at bay. Still, you walk on, for there is no choice. In the fields, the soil lies hard beneath a crust of frost. The tools you carry are heavy in your hands, their handles worn smooth by years of use. You bend, shoulders already aching, and begin the slow rhythm of labor once more. Every breath fogs in the air, every movement stirs the ache that never truly left from yesterday. Yet the body works on, fueled not by strength, but by necessity. As the sun finally rises, pale and weak, it brings no warmth, only a faint silver glow that casts long shadows across the village. The light reveals the hardships, more clearly the thinness of the animals, their ribs showing beneath dull coats of fur, the rags of clothing patched over and over, the gaunt faces of neighbors who work beside you, their eyes hollow but determined. This is no golden dawn. It is a reminder of the endless cycle, the wheel that grinds all men down. The village stirs fully now. Smoke begins to curl from chimneys, animals low and bleat, carts creak along frozen paths. A bell tolls from the church, calling some to prayer before work consumes them. The sound echoes across the fields, a hollow reminder of salvation promised yet rarely felt. Many pause to mutter a prayer, crossing themselves quickly, not out of piety but from fear. The church teaches that hardship is God's will, that suffering in this world ensures reward in the next. But in the hollow of your stomach, in the ache of your bones, the promise feels far away. You work until the sun climbs higher, though its light is thin and its warmth absent. Hours stretch long, measured only by the rhythm of labor. Hunger gnaws. Again before midday, the weak morning meal already burned away by effort. Yet you push on, because there is no other choice. To rest is to risk falling behind. To fall behind is to invite hunger, punishment, or worse. At last, a break comes. Bread is passed around hard, coarse, often stale. Sometimes there is a scrap of cheese, sometimes an onion or a few dried beans. The food is meager, but it staves off collapse. You chew slowly, forcing each mouthful down despite its dryness, because you know it must last. The sun moves westward, shadows lengthen, and the day begins to draw to its end. Yet as you look around, you know it will not be long before the night returns, bringing with it the same discomfort, the same fears, the same cycle that never loosens its grip. This is life in the Middle Ages, a circle of hunger, labor, fear, and restless sleep, repeated without end. And though you tell yourself you are used to it, the truth lies heavy in your heart. No one ever truly grows used to such hardship. You only endure it because you must. The sun has climbed higher now, though it offers little warmth. A pale light stretches across the village, but the cold remains locked in the soil, the air, and your bones. As you labor in the fields or along the village paths, you quickly remember something more suffocating than hunger or fatigue, the weight of society itself. In the Middle Ages, you do not belong to yourself. You belong to someone above, your Lord, your bishop, your king, and beyond them all, to the church that claims dominion over your very soul. Every step you take is bounded by rules, spoken and unspoken. To live is to submit, and to question is to risk ruin. The church bell tolls again, its sound commanding rather than inviting. People cross themselves reflexively, not daring to ignore it. Faith is not a private matter here. It is woven into every thread of daily life. To miss Mass, to question the priest, even to whisper doubts about God's will, these are dangerous acts. The church is not merely a house of prayer. It is the judge, the teacher, the record keeper, the enforcer of morals, and often the only authority that reaches into every corner of life. Step inside the village church, and you are greeted not by comfort, but by awe and fear. The air smells of candle wax and damp stone. Flickering light plays across painted saints and crucifixes, their eyes seeming to watch your every move. The priest's voice echoes from the pulpit, heavy with warnings. Sin lurks everywhere. Hellfire waits for the unrepentant, and suffering on earth is but a test before eternal reward. The words are not suggestions, they are commands. To disobey is to risk your soul and often your body as well. Confession is not optional. If you fail to attend, suspicion rises. What sin are you hiding? What secrets rot in your heart? In a world where rumor spreads like fire through dry thatch, such suspicion can ruin you. And if the priest decides your penance must be harsh, you obey. Whether it is fasting, flogging, or public humiliation, you bow your head and accept it. There is no appeal, no second opinion, no mercy outside what the church allows. But while the church governs the soul, it is disease that governs the body. Illness is everywhere, crouched in the shadows, waiting to strike. You may wake one morning to find a cough tearing at your chest, your skin hot with fever, your strength fading by the hour. No physician will come to save you. There are none. For the poor, at best, you turn to the village wise woman who offers herbs and whispered charms. At worst, you are told your sickness is punishment for sin. Plagues sweep through the land like storms, sudden and merciless. When pestilence comes, it does not matter how faithful you are or how hard you work. One day you stand in the field. The next, you are writhing in straw, your body covered in sores, your breath shallow, your family keeping their distance in terror. The church bells toll endlessly, then not for mass, but for death. Whole families vanish in days. Villages stand, half empty, their doors barred, their hearths cold. Even in times without plague, death is never far. A simple cut on the hand can fester and swell until your entire arm throbs with infection. A rotten tooth can poison the blood. A difficult childbirth can end a life in hours. You live knowing that the line between life and death is as thin as a thread, and it frays with every passing day. Law and punishment are no less terrifying. If you are accused of theft, blasphemy, or even rumor of witchcraft, you stand at the mercy of lords and priests. There is no presumption of innocence, no fair trial. Instead, you may be forced to prove your innocence through ordeal, plunging your hand into boiling water, carrying red-hot iron, or being bound and thrown into a river. If God spares you, you are declared innocent. If not, your suffering is proof of guilt. Justice is not about truth. It is about order, fear, and obedience. Execution is public, a grim spectacle meant to remind everyone else of their place. Gallows stand at crossroads, bodies swinging as warnings. Heads are placed on spikes above city gates. Whips crack in marketplaces, and thieves are branded or mutilated for all to see. Children watch these punishments without shock, because it is part of their world. Death is not hidden, it is displayed. Fear is how society keeps itself in line. Amid all this, you might think the nobility live better lives. Perhaps they do, but only in comparison. Lords and ladies eat richer food, wear finer clothes, and sleep in better houses. Yet even their halls echo with drafts. Their tables often lack abundance, and their lives are just as threatened by disease and death. Their power is not protection, only privilege. And even they bow before the church, kneeling at the same altar, confessing the same sins, haunted by the same fears of hell. For the common man, however, the weight is crushing. You are bound to the land by obligation, forced to give your labor, your harvest, and even your body when war is declared. You cannot leave the village without permission. You cannot choose your own fate. You cannot rise above your station, no matter how hard you work. The ladder of society is fixed, and you are nailed to its bottom rung. And so you endure, not because you believe in fairness, but because endurance is the only option. Every toll of the bell, every cough in the night, every whisper of accusation is a reminder that you live in a world designed to grind you down. You are not the master of your destiny. You are a shadow moving within the boundaries drawn by others. The day wears on, and though your back aches from work, there is no thought of rest. Yet your survival is not only threatened by the monotony of hunger or the ever-present church. Beyond the horizon, dangers gather like storm clouds' dangers that can shatter your fragile existence in a heartbeat. War is never far away. The Middle Ages are not an age of peace, but of ceaseless conflict. Kings and dukes, counts and barons quarrel endlessly over land, titles, and pride. When swords clash, it is not the nobility who suffer most. They may die in battle, but youth the peasant will feel the brunt. Armies marching across the countryside take what they need: food, livestock, firewood, and shelter. If you resist, you are beaten or killed. If you comply, you are left with nothing to feed your family. Sometimes, it is not even foreign soldiers you fear, but your own lord's command. When war comes, he may summon you to fight, armed with nothing more than a wooden spear or a rusted axe. You march into battle, terrified, knowing you have no training, no armor, and little hope of survival. Steel clashes around you, the ground slick with mud and blood, and you realize you are nothing but fodder in a game you cannot control. even when the clang of battle seems distant. The land itself conspires against you. Famine is as much a killer. As war, crops fail with alarming ease. Too much rain, too little sun, an infestation of pests, or soil exhausted after years of planting. One bad harvest means hunger. 2 bad harvests mean starvation. By winter, you may boil grass for soup, chew bark to ease your stomach, or trade precious tools for scraps of grain. Mothers watch their children grow gaunt, and the old quietly fade away to leave more food for the young. And famine brings another curse. Desperation, neighbors may steal from one another, and communities once bound by survival begin to fracture. The bonds of fellowship break under hunger's weight. Theft rises, suspicion grows, and punishments become even harsher. In this way, hunger does not only kill the body, poisons the heart of the village itself. When the body grows weak and the mind desperate, superstition takes hold. In the Middle Ages, the unknown is explained not by science, but by fear and rumor. If disease spreads, perhaps your neighbor is cursed. If crops wither, perhaps someone has angered the saints. If storms destroy your harvest, perhaps a witch has hexed the land. Accusations are easy to make and deadly to receive. A crooked back, a muttered word, a bad-tempered glance. Any of these could mark someone as suspicious. The accused rarely survive long. They may be dragged before the community, beaten, tested, or burned, all in the name of purging evil. You may know in your heart that your neighbor is innocent, but to defend them is to risk joining them in the fire beyond human. Cruelty, the natural world itself, is an enemy. Winters are long and merciless, summers short and unreliable. A single storm can flatten fields. A flood can sweep away homes. Fire, once unleashed, rages unchecked, turning thatched cottages into ash in moments. You have no insurance, no safety net. A single disaster can destroy the work of a lifetime. And when nature spares you, predators may not. Wolves prowl the edges of villages, waiting for weak livestock or unattended children. Bandits, worse than wolves, roam the forests and roads. These men live outside law and faith, hardened by hunger and greed. They strike travelers, burn wagons, and vanish into the night. To walk alone beyond the safety of the village is to invite danger, even if you survive these terrors. War, famine, superstition, and disaster leave scars. Scars not only on the body, but on the spirit. Life becomes a constant gamble, survival a coin toss. Every season brings a new threat, every year another trial. You live not in certainty, but in dread, wondering when your turn will come. When dawn breaks over your medieval village, it is not the sun that wakes you, but obligation. The rooster may crow, but truthfully, your body is already half stirring in the cold. Sleep is shallow when the nights are so frigid, and when straw bedding pricks at your skin, comfort is nearly impossible. Your joints ache, your stomach growls, and your body knows one thing. There is work to be done, because in the Middle Ages, idleness is death. The demands of survival are relentless. Every day is consumed by toil. For the men, labor often begins in the fields, armed with little more than crude tools, a wooden plow tipped with iron, a sickle dulled from use-you-turn soil that resists you with every stroke. Your hands blister, your back bends, and sweat drips into your eyes, even on cold mornings. The earth gives grudgingly, and each seed planted carries not only hope, but also a gnawing fear. What if the harvest fails? For women, the burden is no less severe. If men break their bodies on the fields, women wear theirs down inside the home. You rise before the men to stoke fires, grind grain into flour with a heavy quernstone, and prepare bread that will barely stretch across the family's needs. You mend torn clothing, spin wool, weave linen, fetch water from the stream, and care for children who seem endlessly hungry. And that is only the morning. By evening, you still face cooking, cleaning, nursing, and tending to the animals. Work is divided by gender, but not by hardship. Both men and women are trapped in cycles of exhaustion. To rest is a luxury. To complain is dangerous, for the church condemns sloth, and your Lord condemns inefficiency. You are expected to carry your burdens without question, without pause, and without reward. For children, life is no gentler. Childhood, as you understand it today, scarcely exists. A boy of 7 might be driving cattle to pasture. A girl of 10 may be learning the endless rhythm of household tasks. Play is fleeting, stolen in scraps, because every pair of hands matters. If a child survives infancy, their worth lies in how quickly they can contribute to the grinding machinery of survival. Even the noble classes, though exempt from ploughing and grinding, are not free from labor only. Theirs is of a different kind. Knights train endlessly, honing their swordsmanship, riding skills, and strength. They live for war and carry the weight of violence in their duties. Noble women oversee vast households, direct servants, manage estates, and secure alliances through marriage. Yet, for all the layers of society, one truth binds them together. There is no escape from duty. Religion weaves through this labor like a chain. Each day is structured not only by toil, but also by prayer. The bells of the church call you at dawn, at midday, at dusk. Even when the body aches and the stomach churns, you must kneel, fold your hands, and recite words that promise salvation but bring no bread. Work and prayer blend until your existence feels less like a life and more like a ritual of survival. The weight of gender roles deepens the despair. Women are considered spiritually weaker, more prone to sin, in need of strict obedience to father or husband. Men are expected to bear authority, labor, and violence without hesitation. To step outside these boundaries is to invite punishment or shame. A woman too outspoken may be branded unnatural. A man too soft may be mocked as unworthy. Your role is not chosen, it is imposed, enforced, and carried until death. Even leisure, when it appears, is a hollow echo of freedom. Feast days may bring music, dance, or small moments of respite. But even these are overshadowed by the looming return to labor. You laugh briefly, then wake the next morning with sore feet and heavier chores. The festivals that punctuate the year are not moments of indulgence, but desperate pauses in an endless march. The cycle is unbroken. Work until you ache, sleep until hunger wakes you. Rise and repeat. The land takes your youth, the work bends your back, and you watch time pass, not in seasons of joy, but in fields planted and harvested. Children born and buried, tools repaired and broken again. In this grinding wheel of existence, you begin to realize that your body is not your own. It belongs to the land, to the Lord, to the family, to God. And when it finally gives out, you will be buried in soil you once tilled, replaced by another pair of weary hands. Even if your body endures the endless work, the mind begins to crack beneath the strain of medieval life. Poverty is not just an economic condition, it is the air you breathe, the water you drink, the skin you wear. It follows you into every corner of your existence, gnawing at you in ways that cannot be shaken off. Your home is little more than a shack of timber and mud, its thatched roof leaking during heavy rains. In winter, the walls seem to groan with the cold, and frost lingers on the inside as if the outdoors has crept in. Vermin skitter in the corners, lice bite at your skin, and the smell of damp rot mixes with smoke from the central hearth. For all your labor, you possess no real security. You live at the edge of survival, balanced on a knife blade that can snap at any moment. What makes poverty in the Middle Ages especially brutal is its invisibility as injustice. There are no words, like social mobility or human rights. You have been told since birth that your poverty is your place, ordained by God. The priest reminds you that treasures in heaven are more valuable than treasures on earth, and that suffering is a test of faith. Yet this offers little comfort. When your stomach twists in hunger, when your child coughs through the night, when frostbite creeps into your fingers, fear feeds on this vulnerability. You live with a constant, buzzing anxiety that disaster is never far. A failed harvest means famine. A sudden sickness means death. A small injury cut from a sickle. A burn from the hearth can fester into infection that slowly drains the life from your body. You know these dangers well because you have watched neighbors waste away from them, their families helpless to intervene. Beyond sickness and hunger lies the fear of punishment. The Lord who rules your land demands taxes, and labor without mercy. Fail to meet his expectations, and you risk fines, beatings, or worse. If accusations of theft or dishonor arise, the punishments are designed not merely to correct, but to terrify. Stocks in the town square, whippings, mutilations, or hanging all spectacles meant to remind you of your powerlessness. The law is not protection, but a weapon wielded against the poor. And then there are the fears that live in the imagination. In a world with little scientific understanding, the night is thick with terrors. Witches, demons, and spirits are said to lurk in the dark forests. Strange illnesses are blamed on curses. A sudden storm feels like divine wrath. Each unexplained tragedy demands explanation, and those explanations often paint a terrifying picture. God's punishment, the devil's trickery, the malice of neighbors. Superstition becomes both a comfort and a curse, fueling paranoia that makes life heavier still. The church, though a source of community, amplifies these fears with constant reminders of hellfire and judgment. You are told that every sin, no matter how small, could doom your soul. Lustful thoughts, idle chatter, missing mass, disobedience, even doubt itself are enough to condemn you. So you live not only with hunger and hardship, but with the dread that your eternal soul may already be lost. Salvation dangles before you, but only through obedience, confession, and suffering. This constant cycle of fear erodes the human spirit. It shapes how you walk, how you speak, how you think. You keep your eyes down in the presence of authority. You avoid speaking too loudly about your doubts. You accept humiliation because resisting it is more dangerous than enduring it. Over time, fear becomes not just an emotion, but a condition of life. And yet, beneath all this, you still dream. Perhaps of enough bread to fill your belly. Perhaps of land that you could call your own. Perhaps, in rare moments of quiet, of a life where you do not wake with your heart pounding in dread. But these dreams are fragile, fleeting, as quickly crushed by reality as frost crushes a tender seedling. Your existence in the Middle Ages is not just hard labor, not just hunger, not just sickness. It is a psychological imprisonment, You are hemmed in by walls of poverty, chained by superstition, beaten down by authority, and haunted by the knowledge that no matter how much you endure, it may never be enough to guarantee survival. That is, while you would not last a day, it is not only the physical conditions that would break you, but the unceasing pressure of fear of hunger, fear of sickness, fear of punishment, fear of damnation, a life where joy is rare, fleeting, and fragile, and where despair is the constant companion at your side. At this point, after hours of ceaseless toil, gnawing hunger, the ache of illness that never fully heals, and the shadow of punishment and damnation hanging over your head, you might imagine that people of the Middle Ages were broken shells of humanity. Yet what makes survival in this world so impossible for us today is not only the grinding misery of its realities, but the near-total absence of hope, that essential fuel of human endurance. For modern people, no matter how grim things become, there exists at least the idea of progress, of rescue, of change. If you fall ill, a hospital awaits. If you fall into poverty, you might claw your way back through education, through opportunity, through sheer perseverance. But in the Middle Ages, the ladder simply does not exist. There is no rising above your station. You were born into mud, you live in mud, and you die in mud. Your children inherit the same lot, and their children after them. This knowledge sits like a stone on your chest. Imagine waking each day to labor you despise, knowing it will never end and never improve. Imagine watching your children grow thin with hunger, knowing there is nothing you can do to change their destiny. Imagine the creeping illnesses that sap your strength, while the priest tells you it is God's will. Every pathway out is blocked. Every dream of something better is quietly strangled. You would not last a day not, because your body cannot bear the work or the hunger, but because your mind cannot survive the hopelessness. A single modern day stripped of music, of technology, of comfort, of safety nets, replaced instead with bleak certainty that tomorrow will be no different, would break the will of even the strongest among us. It is not that medieval people were weak, they were impossibly strong. They endured what we could not because they had no choice. Hardship was the rhythm of life, suffering its constant chorus, yet even they carried despair in their hearts. Listen closely to the stories preserved from that age, and you hear it in the laments of peasants, in the hollow songs of villagers, in the prayers whispered through tears. The Middle Ages did have joy, of course, festivals, moments of laughter, the brief sweetness of community. But those were flickers of light in a cavern of darkness, and always, the darkness returned. Hopelessness was not just personal, it was systemic. The very structure of society was built to crush possibility. Serfs could not leave their land. Women were bound by patriarchal law. Outlaws faced a life of desperation. Even the relatively privileged merchants, craftsmen lived under the constant shadow of taxation, war, and plague. No class was truly secure. Kings fell as often as peasants starved. Power shifted with violence, and the peasants always paid. The cost to imagine yourself surviving here is to imagine cutting away every modern notion of freedom and possibility. It is to live in a cage, with bars made not of iron but of inevitability. You would not scheme for a better life. You would scrape only to survive the one handed to you. And when despair wrapped itself around you, there would be no psychologist to turn to, no self-help book, no therapy, no medicine. There would be only the priest, reminding you that heaven awaits, but only if you obey, only if you suffer well. It is this absence of hope, more than the hunger or the sickness or the toil. That would break you within hours. Because the body can endure much, but the spirit cannot survive long without the spark of possibility. And in the Middle Ages, that spark was nearly smothered out of existence. That is why you would not last. Not a day, not an hour. Because the very fabric of the age was woven not with progress and possibility, but with resignation and despair. If hopelessness gnawed at the mind, then death itself haunted every corner of existence in the Middle Ages. It was not a distant thought, postponed until old age, but a constant companion and uninvited guest, seated at every table, a shadow trailing. Every step. To live here was to live side by side with mortality in its most unrelenting forms. Walk down a medieval village road, and you will see children coughing in the mud, their small ribs visible through thin shirts. A few steps further, you pass an old woman with a bent back, her hands twisted by arthritis, still carrying firewood because rest was not an option. And then, perhaps at the edge of the village, there lies a shallow pit, hurriedly covered with earth. The smell of death lingers in the air, faint but unmistakable. Someone has gone just yesterday, and tomorrow another will follow. The life expectancy of the time tells its own cruel story. Many children never saw their 5th birthday. A young adult reaching 30 was already worn by hardship, their face marked by lines of suffering. Those who lived past 50 were rare, regarded almost with awe, as though they had cheated fate itself. But age alone does not capture the weight of mortality. For people of this era, death was not an end to be feared in the future. It was an interruption waiting at every moment. A minor wound could kill you. A shallow cut from a rusty tool might swell with infection. The flesh turning black and the fever climbing until you could no longer rise from bed. A simple winter chill could turn into pneumonia and silence your breath within days. For a woman, childbirth was a gamble with death every time, her life balanced on the edge of a knife. And always there were the plagues, sweeping like storms, through towns and villages, leaving nothing but silence in their wake. Imagine yourself in this world. You wake in the morning, already weary from hunger. Your joints ache from the cold. You step outside, the mud sucking at your feet, and watch as the village gathers to bury yet another child. How long before it is yours? How long before it is you? This is not an occasional tragedy, but an everyday rhythm. Death has its own pulse here, beating alongside your own. It is not just the frequency of death that makes this world unbearable for a modern soul. It is the way people were forced to live with it without denial, without distraction. Today, we shield ourselves from mortality. Hospitals hide the dying, funerals are brief and controlled, and medicine gives us the illusion of time. But in the Middle Ages, there was no such curtain. You watched death, smelled it, touched it. You saw faces drained of life, carried bodies to the earth, and whispered prayers over shallow graves. And behind it all, you lived with the terrifying belief that death was not simply an end, but a doorway to eternal judgment. Imagine carrying this, the certainty that every slip of the tongue, every moment of weakness, every failure to confess or repent might condemn you to fire forever. Death was never neutral. It was always heavy with fear, loaded with consequence. A modern person thrust into this world would not just collapse from illness or hunger. They would collapse beneath the sheer psychological weight of mortality. The air itself feels thicker here, burdened by grief, sharpened by the knowledge that every breath might be the last. Could you survive that, even for a single day? Could You endure the constant funerals, the endless fear, the sight of children fading before your eyes. This is why medieval endurance was not merely physical, it was spiritual, psychological, and emotional. To last even one day meant carrying death on your shoulder, staring it in the eye, and walking forward anyway. For us, so used to controlling our fates, so used to medicines and safety nets, the nearness of death would feel like a crushing weight. You would not last, because your heart would falter under the knowledge that tomorrow was never promised, and today might already belong to the grave. For all the darkness, the Middle Ages was not without its moments of joy. Even in a world heavy with hunger, sickness, and death, people carved out spaces for laughter and light. Festivals, feast days, weddings, and church celebrations gave rhythm to existence, like patches of brightness stitched into an otherwise dim tapestry. Yet even these brief escapes were fragile, overshadowed by the hardships that wrapped around them like chains. Imagine the bells of the church ringing on a holy day. The sound echoes across the valley, calling peasants from the fields. The market square fills with noise, children laughing, traders shouting, musicians plucking simple tunes. The smell of roasting meat, rare and precious, drifts on the air. For a few hours, life feels lighter. Men raise cups of ale, women gather in circles, and dancers stamp their feet on the packed earth. A sense of togetherness swells, a reminder that people are more than their suffering. But for a modern visitor, the illusion would quickly shatter. Look closer at the faces in that crowd, teeth rotting, eyes dulled with exhaustion, skin weathered by cold and sun. Beneath the laughter, there is hunger. Beneath the dancing, there are wounds and aches. The joy is real, but it is fragile, like a candle flame fighting against the night. And when the festival ends, the people return to the same mud, the same hunger, the same grinding struggle. Even the food, so celebrated in feast times, was a cruel reminder of scarcity. A noble's table might groan with roasted meats, sugared fruits, and jugs of spiced wine. Yet for the peasants who watched from outside or received scraps, these luxuries highlighted the vast gulf between classes. A crust of bread, a thin broth, or a turnip was the everyday meal for most. To see plenty while living in want was its own kind of torment, like being shown a world you could never enter. And yet, humans are resilient. They found joy in song, in stories told by firelight, in small kindnesses exchanged within families and villages. The minstrels wandering from town to town brought news and laughter. Children played with sticks and stones, their imaginations transforming poverty into adventure. These sparks of humanity shone brightly, proof that even the bleakest age could not extinguish hope entirely. But here lies the paradox. For a modern person, those moments of joy would make survival even harder. Why? Because the contrast between fleeting happiness and relentless suffering would be unbearable. Imagine feasting, one night only to wake the next morning with an empty stomach. Imagine laughing at a festival, then watching a child die of fever the next day. Imagine the warmth of firelight and music, followed by the silence of another burial. The swings between joy and grief are dizzying, a constant reminder of how fragile life is. For medieval people, this was simply the rhythm of existence. Their joy was sharper because it was rare, their laughter louder because it came from hardship. They knew not to expect comfort, so every scrap of it was treasured. But for someone accustomed to modern convenience, to consistent meals and medicine and entertainment on demand, This constant back and forth between joy and pain would feel intolerable. It is here that the cruelty of medieval life becomes clearest. The suffering was not total darkness. It was a storm with occasional breaks in the clouds. And those breaks, instead of offering relief, made the storm feel even worse. To experience joy only to lose it again deepened the ache. To glimpse beauty while surrounded by decay sharpened the sense of despair. Think of it this way. It is easier to endure endless night if you never see the sunrise. But if the sun rises briefly, only to vanish again, the darkness feels twice as heavy. That was the Middle Ages flickers of joy that reminded you of what could be, only to plunge you back into what was, and for a modern soul, used to believing in progress, used to expecting tomorrow to be brighter than today. This cycle would break the spirit. So even in its happiest moments, the Middle Ages was a trap for us. The joy was real, but it was fleeting, and the pain that followed was constant. To live even a single day in this world meant riding waves of hope and despair, never finding balance, never escaping the reminder that survival itself was fragile. Imagine the day has finally come to an end. The sun has sunk behind the hills, casting long shadows across the thatched rooftops. The air is cold, damp, and filled with the scent of wood smoke. You sit in a peasant's hut, surrounded by strangers who would be your family if you truly belonged here. The fire is weak, sputtering as damp logs hiss in protest. Smoke clings to your clothes, stings your eyes, and burns your throat. You huddle close for warmth, though the heat never truly reaches you. Around you, children lie curled together, their small bodies shivering. A woman stirs a pot of watery porridge, the only meal left for the day. A man coughs violently in the corner, his breath rattling like dry leaves. No one speaks much. Words are precious, and silence weighs heavily. The flicker of firelight throws shadows across rough wooden walls, making the space seem smaller, tighter, more suffocating. If you have survived this long, if you have endured the filth, the labor, the hunger, and the constant fear, you are already broken. Your back aches from the plow, your hands bleed from rope and stone, your lungs sting from smoke and cold. The lice in your hair, the rats scurrying underfoot, the unrelenting mud, these things grind you down, not in a day or a week, but in every single moment that passes. And yet, for the people of the Middle Ages, this was life. They knew no alternative. To them, the aches and the hunger were as natural as the rising sun. But for you, a modern soul, it is torture. Every comfort you have ever known has been stripped away. No clean bed, no warm shower, no doctor, no stocked kitchen, no privacy, no sense of safety, no guarantee that tomorrow will come. Step outside for a breath of night air. The village is cloaked in darkness, save for the dim glow of fires seen through cracks in shutters. The stars overhead are magnificent, sharper and brighter than you have ever seen, unpolluted by city lights. For a fleeting moment, you feel wonder. This is the same sky your ancestors looked upon, the same stars that guided travelers and shepherds. But then the wind cuts through your clothing, chilling you to the bone. You shiver violently. Somewhere in the distance, wolves howl and your stomach nods with unease. You remember there are no strong walls, no locks, no police to call if danger comes. The night stretches on, and with it, your fear. The cold grows sharper, the shadows deeper. You lie on a straw mattress, but it does not comfort you. The straw scratches your skin, and the thin blanket does nothing against the creeping chill. You close your eyes, trying to rest, But sleep is broken by the sounds of coughing, crying, and scurrying pests. Your body longs for the warmth of a real bed, the security of locked doors, the steady hum of electricity. But those things do not exist here, and then you realize this is only one day, just 24 hours. Yet already you are exhausted, battered, and defeated. The thought of doing it again tomorrow, and the day after, and for the rest of your life, is unbearable. This is why you would not survive the Middle Ages. It is not just the hunger or the sickness or the violence. It is the unending weight of it all, the dirt that never washes off, the cold that never fades, the labor that never ends, the fear that never sleeps. Even the moments of joy, the festivals and songs, only sharpen the edge of despair when they are gone. To live here is to live always on the edge of survival, never certain of the next meal, never safe from disease, never free from pain. Your body would fail, your mind would fracture, your spirit would break, and that is the final truth. You would not last a day in the Middle Ages, not because you are weak, but because the age itself was merciless. To survive here required a kind of endurance the modern life has allowed us to forget. It required accepting suffering as constant death, as ordinary, and hope as fragile as a candle flame in the wind. The Middle Ages was not a storybook of knights and castles. It was mud and blood, hunger and fear, fleeting joy surrounded by endless struggle. It was a world that shaped history but crushed lives. And for us, carried here only in imagination, it is a world we could never endure.